Hello, everybody, and good morning. Welcome to the Top Producer Show. So our mission is to educate, equip, and train servant leaders. Our vision is to create financially independent achievers, and our purpose is to help people grow. And today we're going to go over what exactly we got out of the 10X boot camp this last weekend. We were going to go over that yesterday, but we got caught up with a bunch of other appointments and phone calls that we need to get back to, which isn't a bad problem. So we're going to be going over that today. So I think I can start off with what I got. So Grant was talking about in the beginning, if you don't have money, you're going to get burnt out faster, because if you're worrying about your basic needs, like how are you going to pay your bills, how are you going to put food on the table, you're not going to be able to focus on the stuff that you're going to need to. So he's like, how exactly are you going to get that money to get yourself into a secure situation so that way you can focus on all the things that you should be focused on? Because he's like, look, if you're messing around with the basic stuff, you need to get the basic shit together. And that was his wording. The next thing is payoff. If the payoff is not enough, you will not risk anything. So if people wonder, they're like, oh, well, why aren't I? And it's kind of like getting into your comfort zone. You're not going to get out of your comfort zone unless the payoff is going to be really, really good, where basically it just has to hurt bad enough where you have to move. So that was really neat. And payoff. Another way to pay off where people find it a little uncomfortable, he's like, look, when you're trying to get a decent payoff from any work, he's like, you need to overpay your people and you need to overpay yourselves. Now, we use that concept in our holistic health business, and we pay our girls a lot more than anybody else in the industry. We do Reiki, massage, and holistic health coaching, because since when we do find those good people, they don't want to leave. I think one of the ladies in here, she's been with us for 7 years. So she was with us since we started. So since we pay so much and we're good to our people, we tend to keep people a lot longer. Oh, let's see. 90% of people don't know what their biggest expense is in their household, and Grant was saying it's your taxes. Taxes is the biggest expense in your household, but people always seem to leave that out. 94% of Americans failed a financial literacy test, and if your finances are suffering, oh, it jumped around there. Anywho. The next thing that Grant talked about was your potential. Where are you at right now, and where is your potential at? So part of an exercise that he put together, he's like, your potential could be way, way up here, and then you might be down here. And there's a bunch of people that went into the group chat, and he's like, tell me where you're at based on what you're trying to do. Where is your potential, but then where are you at right now? And he's like, and you got to be honest with yourself. He's like, don't be kidding me. If you're actually here, like right here, tell me that you're right here, but also be honest with yourself. Where are you at on that potential scale? And then once you realize where you're at, what are going to be the action steps that you need to be taking to be able to get up to your highest potential? But he's like, but you have to be realistic about it. So that way you know how to grow. And then where are the places that you need to work on to be able to get yourself? Is it just productivity? Is it personal development? Do you need to touch up on your sales skills? He's like, you have to really look into it so that way you're getting the most out of you. He says you're paying with the wrong set of rules. So everybody is taught work hard, save your money, but that's not always what you need to be doing, because you could work hard all you want, but just hard work doesn't get you where you need to go sometimes. Because if you just work a regular job, you can work hard, but if there's no way for you to actually scale up in that job, you're not really getting anywhere. And just saving money isn't going to make you rich either, because he's like, money in the bank doesn't do anything. He's like, the only reason to save money is that you save money so that way you can go invest into something. He's like, that's the only reason you save, because otherwise you're making the bank's money. So to raise to the top of your potential. So number one, I don't know everything. Admitting that you don't know everything that you're supposed to go do. Number two, you need people who live there and people who want what you want. So getting around the people who have the things that you want, because unless you're around people who make you uncomfortable, where you feel a little insecure, where you're like, I'm not sure I fit into this group. Like, you guys are doing pretty well, and compared to you guys, I'm not. But it's getting around those people that's going to make you scale up, because they're going to talk about very different things than people than you may have gone to high school with. The conversation is going to be completely different. So he's like, surround yourself with the people that are striving for what you want. And then number three, you need to you need a new set of rules. So sorry, looking at this. There's quite a few one-liners that he gave me that I really like, so it's just kind of organizing some of the little things that he said and then the actual training. So, one second. Oh, another thing that he went on is know what it costs to live in your area and what are the expenses. The solution to the problem is not to reduce your expenses, but to make more money. If you don't make more money, you begin to get worn out, and the reason you want to save money is so that way you can invest it. So the American dollar has lost 90% of its value over the past 50 years. So this is where he really hammered down on scaling up. He's like, you have to know what it costs in your area, so that way you can figure out where else you want to go. Because most people don't know their expenses. This seemed very bizarre to me when I started talking to people, because it's actually way more common than what most people think. Because we sit down and we try to do coaching with some people, and I'm like, okay, what are your expenses? Like, what is that amount each month? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, you don't know? Why do you not know? I'm like, how have you survived this long not knowing what your expenses are? I'm like, oh dear Lord. So, but it's something that's very common with people, but you don't know. And you also need to, he's like, look, you do need to make more money, but you also need to keep track of where it's going, because you also need to be able to keep track of whether or not it's wasteful spending and whether or not you're putting that money where it's supposed to be going, so that way you can go forward. So top of the wealth class. So there's the wealthy, the upper middle class, the lower middle class, and then poverty. So the upper middle class and the middle class have two things in common. They're savers. And the wealthy love to use debt. So the wealthy use debt to be able to get forward. People who are in the middle class, upper middle class and below, always put their money away, save for a rainy day, work hard, but they don't really seem to get anywhere. So Grant really touched on, he's like, you don't want to be scared of a credit card, because credit cards are great for making sure that you could get the money to go. Because he's like, you could pay all that off later, but he's like, but make sure that you have an action plan to really get yourself forward, so that way you can use debt into your favor. And actually at one point we went through, or you went through a course that talked about how to use credit cards at one point, but use them in the right way, because you can't just spend on stupid stuff. Like, I can't go into the studio and replace all the furniture and like give the place a makeover, because even though it's going to make the place look nicer, it's not necessarily going to make the bring in more people. It doesn't do that. But if I were to put that money into advertising for the business, or put the advertising into real estate where it's going to start bringing us people for homes, that's completely different. So it's just using debt wisely. Are you just trying to get by, or are you trying to be comfortable, or are you trying to get rich? And everybody's at different points in their life, and some people are completely comfortable with being comfortable, which is fine, but then you have to recognize where you're at on that scale and what is it that you really want. Do you just want to be comfortable, or do you want to set yourself in? Because comfortable isn't actually comfortable, because if anything happens, comfortable is going to get very uncomfortable really quick. But it's the people who are rich who end up who have more options, and they're able to do what they need to do to fix whatever just hit the fan. So money will not buy happiness, but it will buy everything else, including health. We teach this in our holistic health practice. You do have to spend the money to make sure that you're healthy. You need to make sure that you're eating right. You need to make sure you're drinking enough water. Although, funny enough, I think other than some of the supplements we take, our food actually doesn't cost that much, because since we don't spend all the money on all the junk and shit most people eat, we actually don't spend that much in food, more in food than with the healthy stuff than we do with everybody else. The only thing that we spend a lot of money on is a couple supplements, but that's it. So, because he also touched on, he's like, you have to make sure that you take care of yourself, because part of reaching your potential is making sure that you're taking care of your body, because if your body's not okay, you're not going to be okay either. So no target means no attainment of the target. So what is on your bucket list? What house do you want to live in? What car do you want to drive? How much does it cost to have a nanny? How much does it cost to have someone else clean your house? How much does it cost to have a tutor for homeschool for your kids? And how much does it cost to have a landscaper? Now, he was talking about when you set your goals of what type of lifestyle that you want, you have to know the exact number of what that's going to cost, so that way you can do it. Because he preaches about this all. Shut that off. There we go. He's like, you need to stop spending time on stupid shit, because he's like, if you have $1 million deal and you call them and say, hey, I'm running late, I'm just finishing up mowing my lawn, but I'll be there in a second. He's like, you're gonna lose that deal immediately. He's just like, you don't need to keep spending time doing stupid stuff that you could hire somebody else to do. He's like, it's not worth your time. And he even touched on, people would say, but I love mowing the lawn. And he's like, that's great, but it's losing you money. People like, I love to garden too. Like, I'm kind of guilty of this. Somebody else can mow my lawn, but I do like to garden. But I've also had to learn that some things are not what I need to be doing right now, and then putting it off onto somebody else to make sure they get it done, because it's not something that I need to do. Anywho, so once you figure out the exact number of what you need to put it on the target, and then you need to keep the list. He's like, guys, I look at this daily. He's like, I look at everything that I want to accomplish, and I keep track of it daily. I keep it up. I put it in a notebook. I write it down consistently, so that way I keep my attention on that target. If you give up on it, you cannot have it. So the one thing about writing everything down is, not only does it keep you on track, but it keeps your hopes up, so that way you don't give up on what you're trying to strive for. Because no matter what everybody else says, the nice thing about laser focus is when you are focused, nobody else can tell you whether or not what you're trying to achieve is silly, because you'll just ignore everybody else. But keeping everything written down is what's going to keep you on there. Money never sleeps, but it does get bored. If you don't pay attention to it, money is going to find somebody else who's going to pay attention to it. So money just sitting doing nothing, he's like, you got to do something with your money. Don't let it just sit in your bank account. You need to figure out where you're going to go invest it, so that way you can double your money. And then once you double your money, you need to take it again and keep the process going of, how are we going to duplicate? How are we going to expand? How are we going to push this further? Okay. anytime you feel you fail or feel discouraged, you need to write your goals down. Nothing puts you back on track again than writing them down again. And he's like, there's a time to buy and there's a time not to buy. He's like, don't spend money on stupid stuff. He's like, a watch, that's not exactly going to make me money. He's like, sometimes it's kind of nice, but he's like, a lot of people like to look rich, but they're not rich because they spend so much money on a bunch of other stuff that they don't put the money where it's gonna be. He's like, you're making somebody else money by buying the high-end watch or the high-end purse or the Gucci belt. He's like, you need to stop spending money on stupid stuff. He's like, now I buy that stuff because I made it. I could do that every once in a while. He's like, that's fine. He's like, watches, I love watches. But he's like, but until you get to a certain point, you're not supposed to buy these things yet. You're supposed to be focused on your business and what you're trying to go do. Kevin Hart said it best at the 10X conference 2 years ago. Because Kevin Hart, he's like, I have a couple watches that I really, really liked. He's like, but I didn't buy them right away. He's like, what I ended up doing is, he's like, until I reach this goal, so we talked about the potential chart. If you're here and your potential's up here, he's like, until I reach a goal right here or this goal, I'm not buying that watch until I reach that goal, because then it becomes a lot more meaningful and it's a way to reward yourself, or that is what you strove for and it's a part and it keeps you going. Because some people are motivated by some material things, and it doesn't have to be a watch, it could be anything else that you like. In our case, it would probably be another cat. Absolutely ridiculous. We need a bigger house. That's the next goal. We need a bigger house so we can have more cats. Anywho. So 40% rule. So out of 100%, the government makes 40% and you pay 40, and then you're supposed to live off of the 20%. How much do you need to be making where that 20% of your income you can actually live off of? That's the number that you have to actually look for, because everybody always forgets about taxes. So he's like, you need to put that into your equation. So an example, if you're making $10,000 a month, $4,000 goes to the government, $4,000 goes into investing. So that's where that would go into an account, save up until you can go invest it. Because depending on what you want to go invest in, you might have to build it up a little bit and then go. But then $2,000 is what you have to live off of. Now, some people, depending on where you're at, cannot live off of $2,000 a month. Because if you have kids, you have pets, life happens. So he's like, most people can't live off of $2,000 a month. So you need to figure out, okay, how much more do I actually have to make? So that way I can increase that 20%. So that way I can live off of that, but then the rest of that goes somewhere else. So the cost of your living does not change by saving more. It changes by making more. So, and then he went through something else here. So number one, the cost of living can't change if you save more, but because you make more. Number two, if you can't write it down, don't buy it. So if you can't use it as a write-off, you shouldn't be buying it. He's like, because that's just wasteful. And when you should be focused using your money on things that are going to grow your business, you shouldn't be wasting on like a watch or a purse. Number three, use it. Don't own it. Rent or lease. Do not own. So he always said rent what you own, but own what you rent. So he owns quite a few buildings where he rents out to people, multifamily units. So he's like, I'm using that. He's like, I rented my home for the longest time. He's like, now it makes sense to buy my house. But in the beginning, he's like, you always want to rent everything. He's like, that way, if there's a money opportunity elsewhere, you want to be able to pick yourself up and just go. He's like, if you got to fiddle with selling the house, fixing a bunch of stuff up, dealing with another realtor, he's like, it's a huge mess. And he's like, it wastes time. But he's like, you don't want to be tied down in one place, because if the opportunity came up where you could be making more elsewhere, he's like, you want to be able to pick up and go. He's like, also, when you rent, somebody else takes care of the yard work. If something breaks, somebody else takes care of that. He's like, you don't want to spend, he's like, so that's why it makes it a lot easier for people, so that way you're spending time doing what you're supposed to be doing. Number 4, stabilize and grow your first flow. So everybody talks about multiple flows of income, but he's like, you need to stabilize that first one first. He's like, get that going. So we have always talked about, it's the growth triangle. So you always want to have your high paid skill. That's the solid stream of income that's always coming in. You rely on that to come in every week or every 2 weeks. He's like, then what you do is you have a scalable business. Now that could be a network marketing business or sales, but something where it's creating cash flow. And then what you do with that cash flow is then you put it into something where it's in high ROI, return on investment. And then you use that money from the scalable business to throw into the investment, so that way that is what ends up growing. But until you get the first one figured out, you do not move on to another one. So we do that with our holistic health business. That business runs itself at that point. So now we focus more on Legal Shield to be able to grow into our real estate company, so we could start doing more with houses. And he said whenever you have the other businesses, they have to be connected in some way. Now, Legal Shield doesn't connect to holistic health very much, even though we do use some of the products for it. Legal Shield works better with the real estate company, so it doesn't necessarily relate to our main income, but it does relate to what we want to go into with the real estate company, because we learned how to use it to help people increase their credit, which that gives us the leads to then go help people with homes. So he's like, they do have to relate. It can't just be a bunch of random stuff where you're just jumping all over the place. Number 5, the 47 rule. So 40 hours of work and 7 hours working on yourself. He's like, you do have to spend time doing that. Number 6, invest money, quit saving it. Psychology of Money. Oh, that was a book recommendation. So he recommended Psychology of Money. This is a book that he recommended, so you can understand that better. Number 7, never lose money, invest in sure things. So he's like, you need to do your research before you just throw money at it, because he's like, it's very easy to become a sucker in the industry if you don't understand what the fuck you're doing. So he's like, don't be a fool. Actually figure out what you're doing, but then don't hesitate for too long, because if you hesitate too long, the opportunity leaves you. He's like, people sit, they'll pray about it, they'll be like, oh, well, I gotta ask my wife. He's like, know enough that you're dangerous, but don't putz around once you know what to do. He's like, you do have to be able to make decisions quickly, because otherwise that opportunity will leave you quickly. Number 8, if I don't have cash, if it doesn't have cash flow, say no. If it's not going to bring cash back, you don't need to be investing into it. 9, the rule of 5. So buy a seat at the table or serve water to the table. So he's like, no matter what, try to get into the room of the people who are trying to get where you want to go. He's like, sometimes you can't always buy the seat at the table. He's like, sometimes you need to work where those people are, and you need to serve water to them. So that way you can at least be around the conversations, so that way you can learn from those people. Number 10, go all in on the wealth target. So you have to take a break from people on the way to your target who are committed to poverty. He's like, it's not that you can't ever be friends with these people again, but sometimes you need to spend less time with them. We've gone over this before. And he's like, it's okay to not have to spend that much more time with those people, because if they're not focused on the same thing that you are, you need to spend more time with the people who are going where you want to go. Okay, Then he says something about quit adding, start multiplying, and everybody, by the way, everybody should buy stupid stuff. There's a time and a place and a number, one when you should buy stupid stuff. So you don't. I'm not entirely sure what I wrote there, so we're gonna skip that. He was talking really fast, so I was trying to jot all this down very quickly. So I'll have to go back and try to make sense of that later. So you must come from positive income, not earned income. So earned income is taxed and positive income is not. So understand that the purchase was stupid, and debt does not get taxed, so cash does get taxed. So that's where he also talked about using the credit card. He's like, if you buy everything in cash, it does get taxed. But if you use a credit card, debt does not get taxed. He's like, so that's why it's, even though it has a percentage where you might have to pay something back if the interest charge, but he's like, but other than that, just the interest charge is actually less than getting taxed. So he's like, so don't be scared of using a credit card. Never trade paper for more paper. I'll give you the principal number. Oh, never trade paper for paper. 12 converted assets. So he talked about a couple different assets. He's like, number one is you want tax write-offs. What are the things that you should be writing off that you may not be doing? Number two, cash flow. And then number three, when someone comes back and buys, you want 3 times more than what you paid. So that way you're actually making something. So cash flow is confidence. So don't get caught up in the idea. You must take action. So go where the fish are. If there is no flow, do not go there. And turn your idea into multiple offers. He's like, this is where you got to get very creative with how you're taking an idea and seeing how you can actually duplicate it, because he used the example of the 10X rule, the book. He's like, that eventually worked into the 10X conference, the 10X boot camp, and he took that, even though the book was one idea, he then took that concept and made multiple products out of it. So he's like, how is it that you can take one idea and turn it into multiple products where it can be multiple streams of income? Number 3, you must be everywhere. Create a presence. So be everywhere at the same time. So a lot of you who know Grant, he is all over the internet. You can find him everywhere. And he's like, the reason you want to do that is you end up discouraging all of the people. You end up discouraging all of the people who are in your, what's the word I'm looking for?
Niche.
Not the niche, it's people who are also in the industry but not working directly with you. Competition. He's like, you end up discouraging the competition that way. He's like, there's a lot of people who ended up just quitting trying to compete with me because they're like, we can't compete with this guy. We could try, but there's so much information out there, we just can't compete with them. Number 5, automate and scale. So what's a way that you can automate what you're doing and then scale up? Because there's only one person, so you do need other people, or you need an automated system, so that way that's handling some of the workload, so that way you can go scale up. Number 6, always acquire new customers. Always be working on who is the new person. He's like, you do want to spend time with some of the people who are already there, but you always need to be working on who's the next person. Marketing truth. So how are we doing on time?
You're 10 minutes over.
I am? Whoops. Well, it was a 3-day conference, so I'm just going to go over this next piece, and then we'll probably continue this tomorrow. So some marketing truths. Number 1, marketing is senior to sales. So if I don't know you, I'm not going to work with you. Number 2, the number of leads is going to determine the number of sales. Number 3, the width of your funnel is going to determine your results. The larger your funnel is at the top, and then it gets like this, the more sales you're going to get at the bottom. Number 4, money follows attention. So he talked about that. If you ignore money, it's going to go find somebody else who's going to pay attention to it. Number 5, the best known beats the best. So you don't always have to be the best in your industry, but if more people know about you, it beats the person who is the best at it. So he's like, you really got to focus on getting attention. Oops, excuse me, hold on. Excuse me. Number 6, all marketing done right, in the right order, always works. Number 7, landing pages beat websites. He's like, landing pages are what you want to use, so that way you're also grabbing attention, because if people are just going to a website and not entering in any information, he's like, you're not able to market to them. Which I was kind of pleased with, because we did this with our traditional business too. Each of my girls are set up like an independent contractor, and each person has a landing page. So every time somebody comes to our website and they want somebody's information, where they want to book an appointment, they first have to enter in their name and email to be able to get one of the girls' phone numbers, so that way it builds their database. So I was pretty pleased to hear about that. I was like, whoo, I'm on the right track. Number 8, marketing never costs money. Never costs money. Not marketing costs money. So putting money out to get more clients through the door isn't going to cost you money, but not spending the money to go get more people is what's going to cost you the most. So with that, I think that's where we're going to leave off today, because oh my god, there's still so much more. This might take a couple of days to go through, but I hope you guys enjoyed some of the information that we're able to talk about today. Jeff, do you have any comments or anything that you would want to add from that first part?
No, we're way over, so.
Okay, so we're going to leave it at that today. If you guys haven't yet, you want to go to the Top Producer Show Facebook page, and you want to go join that page. And also go follow us on YouTube, because each one of these videos is going to be uploaded there. That way, if you want to go back rewatch it, you are more than welcome to. So with that, that's what we have for you guys today, and we will see you tomorrow.